Please prepare to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of GlobalSoft Planet-wide. www.killaquen@globalsoft.com/the-world.
She keeps a moist chandon in her pretty cabinet. Let them eat cakes, she says. Find me on the internet. A built-in remedy for Khrushchev and Kennedy. At any time, an invitation you can decline.
Caviar and cigarettes.
Well versed in etiquette, extraordinarily nice. She's a killer queen, gunpowder gelatine, dynamite with a laser beam, guaranteed to blow your mind anytime.
Hi guys, I'm glad you're here to paint my Killa Queen, our killer whale. So I started off by sketching it out first on that piece of paper and copying my sketch. I was a little intimidated by this guy, not gonna lie, but if you just take your time, you can erase and go back and change anything. Be patient with yourself. No rush, no hurry. Just slowly try to get your whale shape down. That's what I'm doing here. And by the way, I'm doing it on a background that is a water marbling technique that I used. I'll be doing a tutorial on that soon, at least showing you what I'm very new to doing the water marbling. This was my first attempt, by the way, that you see right there. But in a separate video, I'll do that. It's really simple, and you might have seen some kits advertised for the water marbling. I looked up what was involved in a water marbling and what's in it, and I bought the products on Amazon, and I will do a tutorial on that at a later date. But one of the things I like about doing the water marbling technique is it does give the look of a paint pour, but it's extremely fast drying. You can use acrylic, watered down acrylics, or you can use acrylic inks, and you can erase on it like I'm doing here with the whale. So it does not lift up the acrylic or the ink, and you can take your time tracing a Killa Queen on top of it and not worry about erasing off the beautiful color background. Now, if you are in our rock group on Facebook and are doing a whale for our plane ride in that group, please make sure you don't forget to put bubbles. I did not do bubbles on this whale because before that component of the plane ride was decided upon, we weren't going to have bubbles, but now we are. So make sure you add bubbles to this if you are going to use this for your inspiration to do an entry into our plane ride. So still getting that general shape down. And it's almost to where I want it to be. And once I get this shape down, what I'm going to be doing is I want to make sure the colors that I'm going to be putting on this killer whale are really going to pop, because I'm doing that rainbow kind of version of a killer whale. So you will see that I'll paint in the white parts of the whale, very solid white, but then the rest of it I want to have some white underneath the color where I'm going to be applying the color. So I'm doing I will be doing a transparent white. Just getting that shape in each of the areas for the nose and for the white parts, just as close to the shape that I want them for the whale. And we're just about there. All right, now we're ready to get painting. I use this Ceram coat. You can use the white from a Posca, which I use the colors from the Posca diluted for the rest of the colors on the whale. You can also use a white Posca to do this. You don't have to use a different white acrylic paint, and you certainly don't have to use the same brand. But do use a small brush. I like using for these tiny detail spots. That's a 3x3 Santorini square, by the way. So it's small. and getting into those little spaces is tight. So I'm using a very small angled flat brush, doing that first coat. Now I want to make sure it dries completely before I go in with the second coat. Otherwise it might pull the previous layer right up. And I also lately have been enjoying using that glass work surface. That's just a crafting glass surface that I bought on Amazon. And boy, cleanup with this thing is great. Not having to clean out palettes as much, and it just wipes right up with just a little spray cleaner after I'm all done with my painting for the day. Give it a little spritz and wipe it right up. So I highly recommend it. That's just a little side note. Getting our first coat of white on the white spots in place. And obviously you don't need to do the rainbow colors on this that I did. If you want to just paint it black and white, like the beautiful killer whale is, just that beautiful black and white, you can do that combo as well. You don't have to add the colors if you don't want to. As I said, you can just use the white Posca and pump some of that white out, and I'm just showing you how either one is just fine. I did do 2 coats on those white parts that are supposed to stay white, and now I'm just doing a very thin white coat on the rest of it so that the colors, when they go over it, will really pop and stand out a little bit more. Same angled brush so I can get the detail in there. And getting the white spots really white before I do this part helps me to see where the colored parts are going to be versus the white parts. Even though the whole thing is white to start off with, there's enough differentiation between the thinned down Posca white and the 2 coats of the other white acrylic paint that is going to stay white. And on the head of our killer whale, you really don't need to go in with the white since that's going to be painted black. Just giving a little bit more white, not quite as much as the other part, but just a little bit more to help those colors again. Give them a little booster. If I went right on the blue with the colors, they would still be pretty. They just might not be quite as vibrant. I really do like using the Posca pens and the paint out of those pens and using them with a brush. The dilution is really nice to get a nice even flow and smoothness when I'm painting, as well as the fact that it's fun. It's a fun technique doing the watered down acrylics bleeding together as we're going to do on this one, like I've also done in some of my previous videos. But even if you're not doing that bleeding together of colors, it's a very smooth application when you use the paint, the acrylic paint out of the Posca pens. Posca pens are pretty well pigmented, so painting with them can give you really nice bright colors, just like using an acrylic paint, but not as thick and maybe not as difficult to work with. All right, now we're going to put the black on that head of our Killa Queen. And I got to be honest with you, I was very, very intimidated about painting this whale, about getting the shape right, but I urge you, give it a try. Just take your time drawing things out. Try to visualize shapes in whatever it is you're about to draw and tackle them one shape at a time. An oval for the body, a heart for that lower fin right below the head, triangles. Identify it as shapes, and then form your shapes based on what the picture is. Erase one side of the triangle, for example, and curve it, and keep erasing it until you're comfortable with the way it looks. You can take your time. There doesn't have to be a rush to get past that sketch stage. I pleasantly surprised myself if I just took the time. All right, now I'm using all of these Posca colors for our Killa Queen. I want it nice and poppy and bright as a rainbow in honor of Pride Month. But I love rainbows any time of year anyway, so even if it wasn't Pride Month, I probably would want to do this. Just wanting to show you the angle on that brush. This has quickly become one of my favorite brushes. And I take a dilution of the first color that I'm applying, which is the purple, very watered down. I'm saturating that brush. Before I even started, I saturated it with water from my water cup and just barely touching into the bit of purple that I put out on the glass. And that water just draws the acrylic paint right up into the bristles, so you have just enough. Rinsed out the purple, saturated the brush with water again, picked up a little bit of the blue, popped it in, keeping that paper towel handy so you can blot off when you're moving between your colors, and just keep popping those areas of color in a little bit at a time. Don't touch right up to the previous color that you put it on, because it can get a little bit muddy. So put your brush a little bit behind, like I just did there, a little bit behind where the color that's already down is, and that water is going to gravitate and blend right in, and you can just barely tap at it to blend those spaces and move it around a little bit with your brush. If you have a little too much water, that's okay. Pick up a Q-tip. If you have angled Q-tips, those are really, or the pointy Q-tips, those are really, really helpful. And just scoop up some of that water before you go back on to your next color. Let it dry. I'm letting that blue area that had too much water in it dry for a minute, and I'm moving on to a different part. Then I'll be able to layer some more blue on top of it. One of the other benefits to doing this technique is you can layer color upon color and layer upon layer and make it what you want. And I like, as it dries, it shows darker lines from where the water is drying, and the paint is lighter in other areas from where there wasn't as much water. It really gives it a very pretty watercolor effect. Wanted to deepen that purple up just a little bit more. And I'm just winging this. You just go with the flow. Pick your next color, whatever color it might be. I didn't want that pink to be quite so bright, so I am adding a little bit of white into it. Just letting the water bleed it right into the pink. And now it's a little bit lighter of a shade of pink. A little bit more white. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Because I have a light pink Posca, but it's a little too light, and I wanted these colors to stay pretty vibrant. And this one still has that pop. Load that brush up with water. Water is really your friend with this technique. And you can move your rock around. Like if you have a little bit of a puddle of pink with a lot of water and you want it to go in a different area, just slowly tilt your rock, bring it into that other area. It's kind of like those games that had the ball bearings in them, the mazes where you have to tilt them. Just be careful when you're tilting it so your paint doesn't go outside of your outline. Bring it right back after you've gotten the color to where you want it. Bring it right back down. I hope that made sense. It's a visual I have, but it might not be visualized by anybody but me. Who knows? Now we're going to go in with some red. And there are two shades of red that I chose. One is deeper, and that other one is almost an orangey red. And now I have orange as well out on the glass, and I'm using those three shades right now. I want it blended with the pink, but not so blended that you can't pick out each color apart from the other one. So the way to make sure you're going to do that, once again, is when you bring your next color down, your highly watered down paint, and you bring that down, bring it down a little behind your previous color, not right on top of it, because you don't want it to muddy up or become just a solid color. You want to see all those different shades. And when you bring it behind it a little bit, not right on top of it, the water will draw into it, and then you can just kind of pat it in the way you want it. If you have a little too much water, grab that Q-tip, soak it up, and pick up a little bit more paint and go right over that spot. Better to err with too much water than not enough. If you don't have enough water with this application, then it just becomes like just a solid color, and we want that slight opacity in the paint. And once you get going with this, it really pulls together fairly quickly. Obviously, if it was on a larger canvas, it would take a little bit longer than on this 3x3 Santorini square from Shelley, by the way. Shelley Clark Sizemore has beautiful Santorini stones, and they're just a fabulous canvas for me. These squares are way up on my favorites list. And this actually, I believe this was a blemish square that I got a really good deal on some blemish squares from Shelley. She gives awesome prices, but it had a few marks on it. But when I did the water marbling technique on it, you can't see it. So it's still a beautiful canvas. Moving right along. Just the tail area left to go, and then we'll do a little bit of shading, and we'll add some diluted glitter on it so the glitter doesn't take over. Yellow is a little tricky with this technique. You really want to make sure it stays poppy and sharp and bright. So it might take a couple coats to keep it that nice bright yellow. In with the green. I chose 2 shades of green just to add a little bit more dimension. And use whatever you want. If you want to use acrylic paints instead of the Poscas, you can do the same thing with watering it down. If you want to use watercolors themselves, obviously you can do that too. Use whatever you're comfortable with. Just have fun with it. Do it all black and white, do whatever you want. It's just the idea of having fun. And I'm no expert. I am not trained in art, or I haven't taken classes or anything like that. And I just learn as I go. I have fun experimenting with different techniques and trying out fun things. And I just want to encourage all of you to do the same.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Sorry, my Alexa was talking to me in the background. Ignore that. Coming back in with that dark blue and adding a little white or light blue just to make it a little bit different than the blue that was used up toward the head area. I want it to blend with the green, create less of a seam, but I don't want it to take over the green. So I'm coming in right behind it and then just lightly dabbing on top of where that seam would be to make them unite with each other. And if you don't like the way it looks and you want to soften it a little bit more, wait till it completely dries and then go in with a wet brush without any acrylic paint, and you can just dab right on top of where those seams are, and it will blend them together a little bit more. Here I am angling that rock again, just like that ball-bearing maze game, and keeping the water balanced and staying in the lines of my whale. So I'm pulling that blue all around where I want it to go. We've got all our color on our Killa Queen. Just a little touch up. I waited for it to dry, and like I said, I'm going back in with my touch-ups after it's completely dry. I wanted that green to pop out a little bit more, so I'm just adding a little bit more color to it, letting it run, daubing off some excess water, popping that yellow back out with the second coat like I mentioned. Trying to blend it into the orange. I picked up way too much water, so I'm going to daub it off. I'll have to touch up that white a little bit because it did bleed out, but that's not a problem. Now I want to dilute some black just to give a little shadowing on some of the edges of our Killa Queen. And I'm using another new favorite brush. This is a little angled fine liner brush, and it actually came in a set of nail art brushes on Amazon. I really like that angle. It helps to allow me to see what I'm working on instead of having my brush so directly my hand over, like kind of camouflaging what I'm looking at. So that angle is really handy. And you can do that with any brush. You can just take a needle nose pliers and bend your tip a little bit to give you that angled brush. Just a little bit of shadowing. Very diluted on that black. I want a little bit more water in there. Pick up that extra water with those Q-tips. That's where those pointed Q-tips come in really handy, because that's a very fine line right there, and I wanted it to just soak up a little bit where the black went over onto the yellow a little. And we'll go in and do some touch-ups. You won't even know that's there. Little shadowing by that upper fin. Keep it diluted. Giving a little bit more definition on that tail. Hindsight, I wish I had diluted that area just a little teeny bit more. That's all right. I'm still working on getting the right dilution for different parts. We're all a work in progress, aren't we? I like to think so. As you add more water, it softens up that black just a little bit more. Then after I'm done with this, I'm going to do a quick shot with some Rust-Oleum 2X to seal it before I brush on a diluted glitter, because I don't want to ruin any of the artwork that I already have down on the rock. And then I'll dilute the glitter, put it on, and we'll be good to go. So I do a dilution of this Cosmo Glaze. Again, this was after doing a quick shot with the Rust-Oleum clear sealer. And I diluted it because I don't want the glitter to take over that water marbling technique background of the water. I just want a hint of a shimmer. So obviously it's going to dry much faster also because it's diluted and it's more water, and it won't stay tacky quite as long either than the full concentrate of the glitter. And that Cosmo Glaze goes from violet to blue to green, so it stayed with the feel of the water that I was looking for. mixing it around with a little bit of the water from the brush and just barely getting it into place. I really hope you guys give this one a try. It was fun. And if you haven't already checked out my other videos on the YouTube channel, please do so. Please like, please subscribe, and paint with me some more. I'll keep uploading the videos as long as you guys keep enjoying them.
Please prepare to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of GlobalSoft planet-wide. www.killaquen@globalsoft.com/the-world.
She keeps a moist candle in her pretty cabinet. Let them eat cakes, she says. Find me on the internet. A built